Get out! I didn't invite you. The words hung in the air of my dining room like a physical blow. I stood frozen, my hand still gripping the back of the chair at the table I'd spent since dawn preparing. The candles flickered on the birthday cake. Steam rose from dishes of food. Every corner of the room smelled of the green chili enchiladas she loved so much. But when I tried to sit down, my daughter-in-law looked at me as if I were trespassing in my own home. "What are you doing?" Victoria asked, her voice ice cold. "Nobody called you to join. This is my party." I looked at my son Anthony. He sat beside her, eyes fixed on his plate. He said nothing. The guests fell silent, an uncomfortable hush spreading through the room like spilled wine. I stood there in my apron, 14 hours of cooking weighing heavy on my shoulders. It wasn't the first time Victoria had pushed me aside, but this time she'd done it in front of everyone. At the table I'd prepared, in the house that was mine. But to understand how I came to be standing there, humiliated in my own home, I need to start from the beginning. My name is Karen Hayes. I'm 64 years old, and this is my house. I was born in a small town a couple hours outside the city. We were 7 siblings, and I was the eldest. By 15, I knew how to cook, wash, iron, and care for children better than most grown women. My mother used to say I was born with golden hands. At 18, I met Robert. He was a construction worker, strong, quiet, hard-working. We married 3 months later, and a year after that, Anthony was born. My dark-eyed boy who clung to my finger like it was the only thing that existed in the world. Robert worked from sunup to sundown building houses, raising walls. We were poor, but we were happy. Until we weren't. When Anthony was 6, Robert died. An accident at a construction site. Scaffolding that collapsed. In a matter of hours, the man I dreamed of growing old with was gone. I was left alone with a 6-year-old child. No money, no job. I started doing laundry for other people, then ironing, then cooking for parties. I worked 18 hours a day until my hands were calloused and cracked. But Anthony never went hungry. He never missed school. He always had clean clothes and a warm bed. Over time, I saved dollar after dollar. I kept every coin in an old coffee can. And when Anthony turned 10, I bought this house. It wasn't big, but it was mine. I painted it myself. I fixed the leaks. I planted flowers in the yard. Every corner of this house holds my sweat, my effort, my entire life. Anthony grew up here. We celebrated his birthdays, his graduations. I raised him alone. I raised him well. Or so I thought. When Anthony turned 35, he met Victoria. She was 32, with long hair and an easy laugh. The first time I saw her, I thought she was pretty, polite, smart. Anthony was head over heels in love, and I was happy. Happy because my son had found someone, because he wouldn't be alone anymore. They got married 6 months later, a simple ceremony in the backyard of this very house. I cooked for everyone, despite Anthony's offer to cater. "Mom, you should enjoy the wedding, not work through it," he'd said. "Cooking for my son's wedding isn't work. It's joy," I'd answered. At the reception, Victoria hugged me tight. "Thank you, Karen. You're the best mother-in-law anyone could ask for." And I believed her. At first, everything seemed perfect. Victoria would visit me on Sundays. She brought flowers. She helped with the food. She asked how my week had been. Anthony seemed happier than I'd seen him in years. I thought I'd finally have the family I'd always dreamed of. Not just my son, but a daughter, too. Someone to talk to. Someone to keep me company when Anthony wasn't around. How wrong I was. 6 months after the wedding, Anthony came to see me on a Tuesday afternoon. I was watering the plants in my garden when he arrived, looking uncomfortable. "Mom, I need to talk to you," he said. I dried my hands on my apron and looked at him. He had that expression he used to get as a kid when he'd broken something valuable. "What's wrong, honey?" "Victoria and I are looking for an apartment," he said. "But the prices are really high, and with my salary, we can barely cover the basics." I nodded. I knew life was hard. Everything was more expensive now. Rent, food, utilities. "We were thinking," he continued, not quite meeting my eyes, "maybe we could stay here with you for a little while, just until we can save up for a deposit on our own place." I stayed quiet, looking at my son, the boy I'd raised alone, the man who was now asking me for help. How could I say no? "Of course," I said. "This is your house too, Anthony. It always will be." Victoria arrived 2 days later with 3 suitcases. Anthony brought 4 boxes. They told me it would only be for 3 months, 6 at most. I gave them my bedroom, the largest one with the private bathroom. I moved into the small room I'd been using for storage. There was barely enough space for a bed and a small dresser, but I made it work. "It's temporary," I told myself as I arranged my things in the new space. "Just a few months." But the months passed and they were still there. At first, Victoria was kind. She helped with the dishes. She asked if I needed anything from the store. She even cooked every once in a while. But little by little, things started to change. It began with small comments. "Karen, do you always leave the pots there? They're kind of in the way. Don't you think the table would look better on the other side? It would open up the room. Oh, that tablecloth is so old, isn't it? I have a new one I brought. We could use that." I nodded. I moved the pots. I changed the table's position. I put away my tablecloth. Then came the bigger changes. One day, I came home from grocery shopping to find that Victoria had rearranged all the furniture in the living room. The wooden rocking chair Robert had given me when Anthony was born was gone. "Where's my rocking chair?" I asked. "Oh, that old thing," Victoria said without looking up from her phone. "I put it in the garage. It didn't match anything. I bought a new sofa, much nicer, you'll see." I felt a knot in my throat, but I said nothing. Robert's rocking chair ended up covered in dust in the garage. Next was the kitchen. Victoria said it needed an update, that the tiles were ugly, that the sink was too scratched. Anthony hired a contractor. They changed everything. Gray subway tiles, stainless steel sink, white cabinets. I barely recognized my own kitchen. "It looks amazing, right?" Victoria said to me. "Now it actually makes you want to cook in here." But she never cooked. I was still the one who made breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The one who washed the dishes. The one who cleaned. The months turned into a year, and they still weren't looking for an apartment. One day I dared to ask, "Anthony, have you seen any places recently?" My son looked uncomfortable. "Mom, it's tough out there. Prices keep going up. Besides, Victoria says we're fine here. Why waste money on rent when we can save?" Save. That was the word they used, but I didn't see them saving anything. Victoria bought new clothes every week. Anthony traded in his car for a newer model. They went out to dinner on weekends. Meanwhile, I kept working. I washed their clothes. I cooked for them. I cleaned up their messes. And little by little, I became invisible in my own house. They no longer asked if I wanted to watch a certain show on television. They just put it on. They no longer told me if they were going to be late. They just didn't show up. They no longer included me in their plans. I was the one who opened the door when they arrived home, the one who heated up their food, the one who stayed up waiting. But nobody saw me. One evening, I overheard Victoria talking to Anthony when they thought I was asleep. "I'm thinking we should repaint the whole house," she said. "These colors are so dated." "My mom might not like that," Anthony replied, his voice hesitant. "She's particular about the house." "It's not just her house anymore, Anthony. We live here too. We need to make it feel like home." I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering when my home had stopped being my home. Later that week, Victoria invited her friends over. They were 4 women I didn't know. They arrived laughing, with bottles of wine and loud music. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when one of them walked in. "Are you Anthony's mom?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. "Oh, that's great that Victoria has you here to help her with the house," she said. "She's so lucky." I stayed quiet, watching her get water from the refrigerator and go back to the living room. Me helping her. In my house. My house. But nobody remembered that anymore. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed listening to the laughter coming from the living room. from my living room. Laughter from women I didn't know, drinking wine from glasses I had washed that morning, sitting on furniture I hadn't chosen. I got up at 3:00 a.m. and went to the kitchen. Empty bottles on the table, dirty plates piled in the sink, crumbs all over the floor, wine stains on the new tablecloth Victoria had bought. I started cleaning in silence, in the dark, like always. When I finished, it was already 5:00 a.m. I made myself coffee and sat by the window. Outside, the sun was starting to rise. The first light of day filtered through the curtains Victoria had changed last month, gray curtains that made everything look darker. I drank my coffee slowly, looking at the garden I had planted myself, the roses that grew by the fence, the lemon tree I'd planted when Anthony was little. Those trees knew me. Those flowers knew who had cared for them all these years. But inside the house, I was a stranger. Victoria woke up around noon. She came into the kitchen in her pajamas, hair a mess, yawning. "Did you make coffee?" she asked. "Yes, it's in the pot." She poured herself a cup, sat at the table, checked her phone. "Did you clean up everything from last night?" "Yes." "Great. My friends left a horrible mess." She took a sip of coffee. "Hey, Karen, I'm going out today with some colleagues from work. We're going shopping. I'll be back tonight. Leave some dinner for Anthony, okay? Don't let him go hungry." She didn't ask if I had plans. She didn't ask if I needed anything. She just gave me orders in my own house. "Okay," I said. Victoria finished her coffee, got up, and left. She didn't even put the cup in the sink. She left it there on the table, with the coffee ring staining the wood. I washed the cup, like always. Anthony got home from work at 7:00 p.m. He looked tired. He took off his shoes at the entrance and collapsed on the sofa. "What's for dinner, Mom?" he asked. "Chicken mole. Your favorite?" "Perfect. I'm starving." I served him. He ate 2 platefuls. He didn't ask about Victoria. He didn't ask how my day had been. He just ate, watched television, and went to sleep. I stayed in the kitchen washing dishes, cleaning the stove, putting away leftovers. When I finished, it was almost 10 p.m. I went to my room, the small room that used to be a storage closet. The walls still had marks from where the shelves used to be. The window was tiny. Hardly any light came in. I sat on the bed and looked around. All my things were crammed into that space. My clothes in a tiny closet. My photos in a box because there was nowhere to hang them. My rocking chair in the garage. My kitchen renovated without asking me. My living room full of furniture I hadn't chosen. What was left of my house for me? I wondered if Victoria felt the pressure to make her mark in a space that wasn't originally hers. Perhaps she was trying to carve out her own identity in a home filled with my history. Maybe in her mind, transforming the house was her way of belonging. But did that justify erasing me from my own home? The weeks kept passing, and with each one I became smaller. Victoria started inviting more people over, her friends, her coworkers, distant cousins. People I didn't know walked in and out of my house like it was a hotel. One Saturday, her brother arrived with his wife and their 2 kids, little ones who ran all over the house, screaming, throwing things. They broke a vase that had belonged to my mother, a hand-painted ceramic piece I'd treasured for decades. "They're just kids," Victoria told me when I showed her the pieces. "They didn't do it on purpose. Don't be so dramatic." I gathered the fragments, put them in a bag, and threw them in the trash. I said nothing more. Every time I complained, Anthony told me the same thing. "Mom, don't exaggerate. Victoria is just trying to make the house look better. Mom, understand. She lives here too. She has a right to change things. Mom, don't be so sensitive. It's just furniture." Just furniture, just walls, just things. But to me, they weren't just things. They were my life. They were 30 years of memories. They were the home I had built with my own hands when everyone told me I wouldn't be able to do it alone. And now they were taking it away from me, piece by piece. One afternoon, Victoria was talking on the phone with someone. I was in the kitchen washing vegetables. She was in the living room, but she was talking so loudly I could hear every word. "Yeah, it's a pain. she was saying. But it's free. We don't pay rent. We don't pay utilities. We don't pay for anything. I just have to put up with the old woman. She laughed. I know, but Anthony says we still don't have enough saved up, so I have to act like everything's fine. The knife fell from my hands and clattered against the sink. Victoria didn't notice. She kept talking. She kept laughing. I stood there, hands wet, watching the water run. Is that how she saw me? As something to be put up with? As the price she had to pay for not paying rent? That night when Anthony got home, I tried to talk to him. Son, I need to tell you something. What's wrong, Mom? I think it's time for you to find your own place. It's been over a year. You said it would only be a few months. Anthony frowned. Mom, we've talked about this. It's hard out there. But I stopped. I didn't know how to say it without sounding selfish, without sounding like the bitter mother-in-law everyone describes in jokes. It's just that this is my house, Anthony, and I feel like I don't have any space left. You don't have space? Anthony raised his voice. Mom, this house is huge. You have your room. What more do you want? My room was the storage closet, Anthony. But it's a room. And besides, we help with the expenses. I pay the water, the electricity, the gas. Without us, how would you pay for all that? I fell silent. He was right. Since they had arrived, I no longer paid the utilities. Anthony did. And with my pension, I barely had enough for my personal expenses. Forget it, I said. It's nothing. Mom, don't be like that. I understand it's complicated to live together sometimes. But we're family. And family supports each other. Yes, family supports each other. But who was supporting me? 3 weeks later, Victoria announced she was going to host a dinner. A big dinner for her birthday. I'm going to invite my whole family, she said excitedly. My parents, my siblings, my cousins, and my friends from work too. It's going to be an incredible party. How many people? I asked, though I already knew I'd be the one cooking for them all. About 20 people, maybe 25. 25 people in my house. And who is going to cook? I asked, already knowing the answer. Oh, Karen, you cook deliciously, Victoria said with that sweet smile she used when she wanted something. Would you do me the favor? I know it's a lot of work, but nobody makes green chili enchiladas like you. Please? It's my birthday. I agreed. Of course I agreed. Because that's what I did. Say yes, make everyone happy, even if I was left exhausted. Victoria gave me a list. A long list of everything she wanted for her birthday. Green chili enchiladas, Spanish rice, charro beans, fresh guacamole, pico de gallo, 3 different types of salsa, homemade tortillas, and a tres leches cake that, according to her, I made better than any bakery. Do you have money for all this? I asked her. Oh, Karen, you know Anthony and I are saving. Could you pay for the food? We'll pay you back later. We'll pay you back later. Those 4 words that never came true. I took money out of my pension, $200. It was almost all I had left for the month. But it was my daughter-in-law's birthday, and I wanted it to be special. I still had that foolish hope that if I was kind, if I gave more, if I tried harder, she would start to see me, to respect me, to like me. Just a little. I went to the market alone. I bought everything on the list. The reddest tomatoes, the freshest chilies, the most tender chicken, the perfect avocados. I carried the heavy bags back home. My arms hurt. My back hurt. But it didn't matter. I got home and started preparing everything. It was 3:00 p.m., the day before the party. Victoria was in the living room watching television with freshly painted nails. Do you need help? She asked without looking up from the screen. No, don't worry, I can manage. Great. I just got my nails done and I don't want to ruin them. I spent the whole afternoon cooking, and all night, too. Victoria went to bed at 11:00 p.m. Anthony didn't even come home for dinner. He was working late, he told me in a text. I stayed there chopping onions, boiling chicken, grinding chilies. My eyes burned. My hands smelled of garlic and cilantro. My feet ached from standing so long. At 2 a.m., I finished the enchiladas. I put them in the refrigerator. I cleaned the kitchen. And then I started on the cake. The tres leches cake was complicated. You had to bake the sponge cake, prepare the milk mixture, let it soak well, make the meringue. It was a long process, but I had done it 1,000 times. For Anthony's birthdays when he was little, for family gatherings, for every special occasion. I put the sponge cake in the oven. I sat at the kitchen table and waited. The clock said 3 a.m. The house was silent. The only sounds were the hum of the refrigerator and the tick-tock of the wall clock. That clock I had bought at the market when I moved into this house. That clock that had watched Anthony grow up, that had marked every moment of my life here. I poured myself a glass of water. I looked around. The kitchen no longer looked like mine. The gray tiles, the white cabinets. So cold, so impersonal. This kitchen used to be yellow, a soft yellow, like Sunday morning. Robert had painted it when we moved in. He said he wanted me to cook in a cheerful place, a place full of light. Now everything was gray. The oven timer went off. I took out the sponge cake. I let it cool. I prepared the milk mixture. I poured it all over the cake. I put it in the refrigerator. It was 4:30 a.m. I went to my room and lay down with my clothes on. I closed my eyes but couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, thinking about everything I still had to do. The rice, the beans, the tortillas, the guacamole. At 5 a.m., I got up. I changed my clothes. I went back to the kitchen. I started the rice, then the beans. I put on some quiet music, old songs I used to listen to with Robert, songs that reminded me of simpler times. At 8 a.m., Anthony came down for breakfast. "Good morning, Mom. You've been up for a long time." "A little while." He poured himself coffee, sat at the table, looked at everything I had prepared. "This looks delicious. Victoria is going to be so happy." "I hope so." "Mom, thanks for doing all this. I know it's a lot of work." I nodded. I waited. I waited for him to say something else, to ask me how I felt, to notice the dark circles under my eyes, to see that I had been cooking for almost 15 hours straight. But he just finished his coffee, got up, and went to take a shower. Victoria came down around noon. She was all dressed up, hair done, makeup on. "Is everything ready?" she asked. "The guacamole and tortillas are still left, but the rest is done." "Perfect. The guests arrive at 6:00. I want everything on the table at 6:30. Okay? Oh, and Karen, one more thing." She got closer and lowered her voice, even though no one else was in the kitchen. "When my parents get here, could you not be wandering around the living room? It's just that I like to greet my guests in peace without interruptions." I just stared at her, without interruptions, as if I were an interruption in my own house. "Where do you want me to be?" I asked. "I don't know. In your room or here in the kitchen. But only come out when I call you to serve the food." "Okay." I didn't say anything else. I just nodded. Victoria smiled. "Thanks, Karen. I knew you'd understand." She went to the living room. I heard her talking on the phone, laughing, excited about her party. I stayed in the kitchen making guacamole, mashing avocados, chopping cilantro, squeezing limes. At 5 p.m., I started on the tortillas. I made them by hand, one by one. The dough between my fingers, the hot griddle, the smell of corn filling the kitchen. I made 40 tortillas. My hands were tired. My fingers ached. But I kept going because everything had to be perfect. At 6 p.m., the guests started to arrive. I heard the voices from the kitchen, laughter, greetings, the sound of the door opening and closing. Victoria greeted everyone. I could hear her voice, happy, grateful. "So glad you came. Come in, this is my house." Welcome. My house. Those 2 words pierced my chest like needles. I stayed in the kitchen finishing the last details, putting everything on platters, garnishing the dishes. At 6:30, Victoria peeked her head through the door. "Everything's ready, right?" "Yes." "Perfect. Start bringing out the food." I started carrying the platters to the table one by one. The enchiladas, the rice, the beans, the salsas, the tortillas. Every time I entered the dining room, the guests looked at me as if I were part of the catering staff. No one said hello. No one asked my name. Victoria was sitting at the head of the table, in my spot. In the spot where I always sat. The spot from which I had watched Anthony grow up, from where I had shared thousands of meals with Robert. But now it was hers. I finished putting all the food on the table. I went back to the kitchen. I stood there, looking through the pass-through window into the dining room, watching them eat, watching them laugh, watching them enjoy the food I had prepared with my own hands. Anthony was sitting next to Victoria. He looked happy, happier than I had seen him in months. Victoria raised her glass. "I want to make a toast," she said. Everyone quieted down. "Thank you for coming to celebrate with me. Thank you for sharing this moment in my house, with my family." My house, my family. I no longer existed. The guests clapped. They clinked their glasses. They kept eating. I stayed in the kitchen, sitting on a small stool by the sink, staring at the floor. The tears wanted to come out, but I held them back. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Half an hour passed. The plates were almost empty. Victoria came back to the kitchen. "You can bring out the cake now," she said. I got the cake from the refrigerator. It was beautiful, perfect, with white fluffy meringue on top. Victoria had bought candles with the number 32. I put them on the cake. I lit them. I carried the cake to the dining room. Everyone started to sing the birthday song. The song I sang to Anthony every birthday when he was little. But now they were singing it for her. I put the cake in front of Victoria. She smiled, closed her eyes, made a wish. She blew out the candles. Everyone clapped. "Cut it, cut it!" someone shouted. Victoria took the knife. She cut the first piece. She tried it. "It's delicious," she said. "Karen, you did an incredible job." Everyone turned to look at me as if they were just noticing I was there. "Thank you," I said softly. "Serve everyone, will you?" Victoria told me. I started cutting the cake, serving the plates, passing them out one by one. No one thanked me. They just took their plates and kept talking. When I finished, I counted the remaining pieces. There were exactly enough for everyone at the table. I had calculated the portions perfectly, but I hadn't set aside a slice for myself. I went back to the kitchen. I sat down. I listened to the laughter, the conversations, the sound of forks against plates. I felt empty as the plates they were filling. 2 hours passed. The guests were still there, eating, drinking, laughing. I washed all the dirty dishes that were piling up. I cleaned the splatters on the stove. I put away the leftover food. At 10 o'clock p.m., I decided it was enough. I was tired, exhausted. I wanted to go to my room, lie down, disappear. But before I left, I wanted to sit, just for a moment, at my own table, in my own house. I left the kitchen. I walked to the dining room. Everyone was still there. There was one empty chair, just one, at the end of the table. I approached it. I put my hand on the back. I was going to sit down just for a moment, just to feel like I still belonged somewhere. And then I heard her voice. "Get out of here. I didn't invite you." Victoria's scream filled the dining room. Everyone went silent. All eyes were fixed on me. I froze, my hand still on the back of the chair, my heart pounding in my chest. Victoria was looking at me with fury, with contempt, like I was trash that had wandered in from the street. "What are you doing?" she asked me, in that cold voice I already knew too well. "This is my party. I decide who comes and who doesn't, and you are not invited." I felt the floor move beneath my feet. The voices around me became a distant buzz. I could see the guests' mouths moving, but I heard nothing, only the sound of my own heart thumping in my ears. I looked at Anthony. He was sitting there, his fork halfway between his plate and his mouth, completely frozen. His eyes met mine for a second, just 1 second, and then he looked down. He looked down as if he couldn't hold my gaze, as if seeing me hurt him, or even worse, as if seeing me embarrassed him. I waited. I waited for him to say something, to stand up. To tell his wife that this was my house, that I had cooked every dish they were eating, that I had spent $200 of my pension, that I had been working for 18 hours to make this party perfect. But he said nothing. Victoria kept staring at me with those cold eyes, waiting, enjoying the moment, savoring my humiliation as if it were part of the dessert. One of her friends, a woman with short hair who had arrived with a bottle of wine, cleared her throat uncomfortably. She looked down at her plate. Another guest, an older man who must have been Victoria's father, picked up his glass and drank slowly, avoiding my eyes. No one said anything. No one defended me. They didn't even look at me with compassion, just with discomfort, as if I were the one doing something wrong, as if I were the one who had ruined the party. I let go of the chair back. My fingers were shaking. My whole body was shaking, but not from fear, not from sadness. Something deeper was waking up inside me, something that had been dormant for far too long. I took a step back, then another. The sound of my shoes on the hardwood floor echoed in the absolute silence that had fallen over the dining room. Victoria smiled, a small, almost imperceptible smile, but I saw it perfectly. It was the smile of someone who had won, of someone who knew they had all the power. She turned to her guests, and her expression changed completely. Now it was sweet, understanding, almost pitying. "Please forgive this awkward moment," she said in a soft voice. "You know how older people can get. Sometimes they get confused. They lose track of things a bit." She lowered her voice as if sharing a confidence, but made sure it was still loud enough for me to hear. "My mother-in-law is a wonderful woman, really, but lately she's been a little disoriented. The poor thing. There are days when it seems like she doesn't quite understand where she is, or what's happening around her." The words fell on me like stones, each one heavier than the last. Disoriented. Confused. The poor thing. She was telling everyone that I was losing my mind, that I was a senile old woman who didn't understand things anymore. And the worst part? Some of them nodded. They nodded with that expression of false sympathy that people put on when they talk about someone who's no longer all there. "It must be hard for you," said one of the guests, a young woman with big earrings, "taking care of someone who's losing their memory. What a heavy burden." "It's complicated," Victoria replied with a dramatic sigh. "But she's family. You do what you have to do, even if it's exhausting sometimes. There are days I have to repeat things to her 5 or 6 times, and other times she gets stubborn, insists on things that aren't true. But, well, it's part of the process. They say it's normal at this age." I stood there listening to them talk about me as if I weren't present, as if I were a piece of furniture, an object with no feelings, no dignity. Anthony still wasn't looking at me. His eyes were still glued to his plate, pushing the crumbs of cake from one side to the other with his fork. I walked to the kitchen. Each step took an enormous effort. My legs felt heavy, as if I were walking through water, as if my whole body were fighting against an invisible current that wanted to drag me down. I reached the kitchen. I leaned against the sink. My hands were shaking so much I had to grip the edge to keep from falling. I closed my eyes. I breathed deep. The air came in ragged, painful gasps. Behind me, in the dining room, the conversations had resumed. They had already forgotten about me. They had already moved on to another topic. I heard laughter. I heard the clinking of glasses. Everything had returned to normal, as if nothing had happened, as if I didn't matter. But something had changed within me. In that moment of absolute humiliation, I felt a spark ignite. It wasn't rage. It was something deeper, something I hadn't felt in years. It was dignity. I turned on the faucet. I let the cold water run over my trembling hands. The chill helped ground me, reminded me I was still here, still alive, still capable of feeling. Outside the kitchen window, the night was dark. The lights in Sharon's house next door were on. I could see her silhouette moving behind the curtains. She was probably getting ready for bed, alone in her house, with no one to humiliate her, with no one to make her feel worthless. For the first time in a long time, I envied her loneliness. I turned off the faucet. I dried my hands on my apron, the same apron I had worn all day and night. It was stained with sauce, with flour, with everything I had cooked for this party that wasn't even mine. I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. I knew those steps. I had heard them all my life. "Mom," Anthony said in a low voice. I didn't answer. I kept looking out the window at Sharon's house, wishing I were anywhere but here. "Mom, don't be like this," he continued. His voice sounded tired, annoyed, as if I were the one causing problems. "Victoria didn't mean to offend you. It's just that this is her party, her birthday. She has the right to decide who sits at the table." I turned around slowly. I looked at my son, the child I had carried in my arms, the child I had raised alone after his father died, the child I had worked 18 hours a day for, the child for whom I had given up everything. Her party? In my house? My voice came out stronger than I expected. Anthony sighed. He ran his hand through his hair, that gesture he made when he was frustrated. "Mom, we've talked about this. This house belongs to everyone now. We live here. We pay the utilities. You can't keep acting like it's only yours. Things have changed. You have to accept it. You have to adapt to the new family dynamic." He paused, his voice softening slightly, but still firm. "Victoria and I are a marriage. We're a unit. And when she makes a decision about the house, about gatherings, about anything, I support her. That's how relationships work. That's how marriage works." Every word was a blow, but they didn't hurt me like they used to. Something inside me had hardened. Something had broken in a way that could no longer be fixed. "I cooked everything," I said. "I spent $200 of my pension. I stayed up all night. I worked 18 hours to make this party perfect, and I couldn't even sit at the table. I couldn't even eat a piece of the cake I made. And you're telling me I have to accept it? That I have to adapt?" Anthony avoided my gaze. "Nobody asked you to spend so much. Nobody asked you to cook all that. You decided to do it. And now you can't use that as an excuse to make Victoria feel bad on her own birthday. She has guests. She has the right to enjoy her day without you making her feel guilty for not including you in everything." I just stared at him, searching his eyes for something of the boy he had been. The boy who hugged me when he had nightmares. The boy who told me I was the best mom in the world. The boy who promised he would always take care of me. But that boy wasn't there anymore. "Go," I told him. "Go back to your party." "Mom, don't be like this. Don't be so dramatic. This isn't as big a deal as you're making it. Tomorrow this will all be forgotten. You'll see." He had the audacity to attempt a small, reassuring smile. "You just need to calm down a bit. Maybe you should go to your room, rest. You've worked a lot today. You're tired, and when you're tired, everything seems worse than it really is." I didn't say anything else. I just looked at him until he turned and left the kitchen. I was left alone, surrounded by the mess of the party, the dirty dishes piled in the sink, the empty pots on the stove, the crumbs on the floor, the stains on the tablecloth. All the work of 18 hours reduced to garbage that I would have to clean up tomorrow. I looked at the clock. It was 10:30 p.m. The laughter from the dining room continued. The party went on, and I was here, in my own kitchen, feeling like a stranger. I took my favorite mug from the shelf, the blue mug with white flowers that Robert had given me on our first anniversary. It was the only thing Victoria hadn't thrown out, probably because she had never seen it. I kept it hidden in the back of the cabinet. I poured myself some water. I sat on the stool by the window, and for the first time all night, I cried. I cried in silence. No sobs, no noise, just tears that fell onto my lap and got lost in the fabric of my apron. The days after the party were strange. Everyone acted as if nothing had happened, as if that night had never existed. Victoria spoke to me normally. She asked me to cook, to wash, to clean. Anthony came home from work and gave me a kiss on the forehead, just like always. No one mentioned what had happened. No one apologized. And I didn't say anything either. I continued with my routine. I got up early. I made breakfast. I cleaned the house. I made lunch. I did the laundry, like always. But something had changed inside me. Something had broken that night, and I didn't know if it could ever be put back together. A week after the party, Victoria came home with news. "Karen, I have to tell you something," she announced one afternoon while I was folding laundry in the living room. "My parents are coming to stay with us for a few days. My mom needs a medical treatment in the city, and they'll be here for about 2 weeks." She paused, glancing around as if measuring the space. "I'm going to give them your room. It has the perfect amount of space, and it's close to the bathroom." She didn't even phrase it as a question. "You can sleep on the sofa, or if you prefer, you can put a mattress in the laundry room. Whatever is more comfortable for you." I stood there with a towel in my hands, staring at her, processing what she had just said. My room, the only space I had left in this house, the only place where I could close the door and be alone. And now they were taking it from me. "When do they arrive?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "The day after tomorrow. So I need you to get all your things out today or tomorrow. I'm going to clean the room well and change the sheets. I want it to be perfect for them. My mom is very particular about those things." Victoria smiled. "You know how moms are. They always want everything to be spotless." Yes, I knew how moms are because I was one, but no one seemed to remember that. That afternoon I went up to my room. I looked around, the small bed where I had slept for the last year, the narrow closet that barely fit my clothes, the small window that looked out onto the backyard. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I started taking my things out, the clothes, the shoes, the few photos I had in a box, the rosary that had belonged to my mother, the old books I liked to read at night. I piled everything in the laundry room, an even smaller space that smelled like detergent and dampness. There, between the washing machine and the brooms, I put an old mattress I found in the garage. This was going to be my new room. Victoria's parents arrived 2 days later. They were older people, like me. Mr. Arthur was 70, Mrs. Helen was 68. They arrived with 4 large suitcases and many bags. Victoria received them with hugs and kisses. She settled them into my old room. She made them tea. She put on music. She treated them like royalty. I greeted them from the kitchen. I introduced myself. They barely looked at me, a nod of the head, a forced smile, and nothing more. That night, Victoria cooked. For the first time in months, she cooked. She made roasted chicken with potatoes. Nothing special, but she did it for her parents. She set the table nicely. She took out the good plates. She lit candles. I was in the kitchen washing some dishes when I heard them start to eat dinner. I waited for them to call me. I waited for them to say something, but no one did. I peeked into the dining room. The 4 of them were sitting there, Anthony, Victoria, and her parents, eating, talking, laughing. There was no place for me at the table. I went back to the kitchen. I got a plate. I served myself what was left in the pot. I sat on the stool by the window and ate alone in silence, looking at the darkness outside. The following days were the same. I cooked breakfast. I cleaned. I washed everyone's clothes, including Victoria's parents. But at mealtime, they sat together, the 4 of them, like a family. And I ate later, alone with the leftovers. One morning, Mrs. Helen came into the kitchen while I was preparing lunch. "Excuse me," she said, holding out a silk blouse. "Could you wash this by hand? It's delicate. I don't want it to get ruined in the washer. And when you iron it, please be careful. It's silk. It needs to be ironed on low heat." I just stared at her. She was giving me orders in my house as if I were the maid. "Of course," I said. "Thank you. Oh, and one more thing. Could you make vegetable soup for lunch? Arthur really likes soup, but not with too much salt. He has high blood pressure. You have to watch those things when you cook for older people. We can't just eat anything at our age." I nodded. She left the kitchen. I stood there with the silk blouse in my hands. Older people. As if she and I weren't almost the same age. As if I didn't know what it was like to take care of one's health. As if I were different. Inferior. That afternoon, while I was washing her blouse by hand, I heard voices in the living room. I got a little closer. I didn't want to eavesdrop, but the voices were loud. It was Mr. Arthur talking to Anthony. "Your mom seems like a hard-working woman," he was saying. You can tell she knows how to run a house. Victoria told us she takes care of everything. It must be a relief for you to have that help. Hiring someone full-time to cook and clean would be so expensive. You must be saving a ton of money this way." There was a silence. I waited for Anthony to say something, to clarify, to explain that I wasn't the help, that I was his mother, that this was my house. But all I heard was his uncomfortable laugh. "Yeah, she's really useful to have around," Anthony said. Useful. That word just hung in the air. Useful. I moved away from the living room. I went back to the kitchen. I finished washing the blouse. I hung it up to dry. I started chopping the vegetables for the soup. My hands were shaking. The knife was slipping. I had to stop, breathe, tell myself that nothing was wrong, that everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. Victoria's parents stayed for the full 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, I ceased to exist as a person. I became a ghost, a shadow that cooked, cleaned, and washed, but had no voice, had no opinion, had no place at the table. I slept in the laundry room on that old mattress on the concrete floor. The smell of detergent gave me a headache. The noise from the pipes wouldn't let me sleep. I would wake up at 5 o'clock a.m. because someone flushed the toilet, and the water rushed through the pipes right next to my head. But I didn't complain. Because if I complained, if I said anything, they would surely tell me I was being dramatic, that I was exaggerating, that I was playing the victim. One night, I couldn't sleep. It was 2 o'clock a.m. The mattress was uncomfortable. The room was cold. I got up. I went to the kitchen. I made myself some tea. I sat by the window looking at Sharon's house. Her lights were off. She was sleeping peacefully in her bed. In her house. With no one to make her feel invisible. I drank my tea slowly. The hot liquid comforted me. It was the only thing that made me feel something close to peace. I heard a knock at the back door. I jumped, startled. Through the glass, I saw Sharon's face. I went to open the door. "I saw your light on," she said. I couldn't sleep either. She came in. She sat across from me at the table. She looked around the kitchen, taking in the changes, the gray tiles, the white cabinets, the stainless steel appliances. "You redecorated," she said. "Victoria did," I replied. Sharon nodded. She didn't say anything else about it. She just looked at me, her eyes full of concern. "Karen, are you okay?" she asked. "I haven't seen you in weeks. You don't come over anymore. You don't call. I've been worried." I wanted to say I was fine. I wanted to smile and pretend everything was normal. But I couldn't. The weight of the past weeks, the humiliation, the invisibility, it was all too much. "No," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm not okay." And then I told her everything, about the party, about the laundry room, about Victoria's parents, about feeling like a servant in my own home. Sharon listened in silence. Her face grew harder with every word. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. "Karen, this is not right," she said firmly. "This is abuse. Don't you see it? They're mistreating you in your own home. They're making you believe that you're the problem. But you're not. They are the problem, and you have to do something before they take everything from you. Before they take away even your dignity." "What can I do?" I asked, my voice small. "He's my son, Sharon. He's all I have." "No, Karen, you have more than that. You have this house. You have your life. You have your worth. And if your son can't see that, then he's the one who lost you, not the other way around." She squeezed my hands. "You have to defend yourself. You have to set boundaries, because if you don't, they're going to keep walking all over you until there's nothing left of you." Her words stuck in my chest. She was right. I knew it, but it was easier said than done. "I don't know if I can," I said. "Yes, you can. I know you, Karen. You raised a son alone. You built this house with your own hands. You survived things that would have broken anyone. You have strength. You've just forgotten it, but it's still there inside, waiting for you to bring it out." I just looked at her. Her eyes were full of conviction, of certainty, as if she could see something in me that I no longer saw. "What if I end up alone?" I asked. "What if Anthony leaves and never comes back?" "Then you end up alone," Sharon said simply. "But alone with dignity is better than accompanied by humiliation. Trust me, I know. I'm alone, and there are hard days. There are days when I miss having someone. But I have never been treated like trash in my own house. I have never been made to feel worthless. And that, Karen, that is priceless." That night I couldn't sleep. Sharon's words spun in my head over and over. She was right. I knew it. But the fear was stronger. The fear of being alone. The fear of losing Anthony. The fear of having no one. But there was another fear, a deeper fear. The fear of continuing to live like this, like a ghost, like someone who only exists to serve, to please, to disappear. What kind of life was that? The next morning I woke up different. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew something had to change. I made breakfast like always, but when Anthony and Victoria came down, I didn't serve them. I put the food on the table and I sat down. For the first time in months, I sat at the table with them. Victoria looked at me, surprised. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I'm going to eat breakfast," I said, "but you always eat before us." "Today I want to eat with you." There was an uncomfortable silence. Anthony looked at his plate. Victoria frowned, but they didn't say anything else. They served themselves. They ate. I did too. It was a silent breakfast. Tense. But I was there, at my table, in my house. After breakfast, Victoria left for work. Anthony too. I was left alone. I looked at the house. I looked at everything they had taken from me. And something inside me began to wake up. I went to the garage. I looked for my rocking chair, the one Robert had given me. It was covered in dust, pushed into a corner behind boxes of Victoria's seasonal decorations. I cleaned it. I carried it to the living room. I put it where it had always been. Victoria could have her new sofa, but my rocking chair was going to be there too. I went to my old room, the one Victoria's parents were using. I knocked on the door. Mrs. Helen opened it. "Yes?" she said. "Excuse me, ma'am. Your 2 weeks are up. I need you to vacate the room today." She just stared at me, surprised. "What did you say?" "This is my room. You came for 2 weeks. They're over. I need you to leave or find another place to sleep, but I'm moving back into my room today." Her face reddened. "And does Victoria know about this?" "This is my house," I said, my voice steady. "I don't need her permission." I closed the door. I walked away. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. But I had done it. I had set a boundary. When Victoria got home that afternoon, she was furious. "How dare you?" she yelled at me. "How dare you kick my parents out?" "I didn't kick them out," I said calmly. "I asked for my room back. They can stay, but not in my room." "This isn't just your house, Karen. We all live here." I just looked at her, and for the first time I didn't look away. "You're right," I said. "We all live here, but this house is mine, and I also have the right to have my own space, to sit at my own table, to exist, and if you don't like it, you know where the door is." Victoria was speechless. Anthony, too. Neither of them expected that from me. That night I slept in my room, in my bed, for the first time in weeks. And even though the silence in the house was tense, even though I knew this was just the beginning, I felt different. I felt alive. The days that followed were a quiet war. Victoria wouldn't speak to me. When I entered a room, she left. Anthony tried to mediate, but I didn't listen to him anymore. I had found something I thought was lost, my voice, my dignity, and I wasn't going to let it go again. Victoria's parents left the next day. They left angry, without saying goodbye, muttering things I couldn't quite hear. And I didn't care. Victoria started cooking her own meals, washing her own clothes, as if she wanted to prove she didn't need me. And I let her. I cooked for myself. I cleaned only my things. I took care of my space. The house felt divided, but at least I wasn't invisible anymore. One night, 2 weeks later, Victoria approached me in the living room. I was sitting in my rocking chair reading a book. Anthony was by her side. They both looked serious. "Karen, we need to talk," Victoria said. She was using her professional voice, the one she used at her office job. "We've thought a lot about this situation, about how to make it work for everyone, and we think the best solution is to sell the house." I put down my book. I looked at her, then at Anthony. "Sell it," Victoria continued. "And with that money, everyone buys something. You buy yourself a small apartment, we buy ours, and everyone is happy. That way there are no more conflicts, no more problems. Everyone in their own space." I just stared at her. Then I looked at Anthony, waiting for him to say something, to say this was crazy, that this was my house and no one was going to sell it. But Anthony just nodded. "It makes sense, Mom," he said. "Think about it. With what this house is worth, you'd have enough to buy yourself something nice, something just for you. And we could also start over with no debt, no pressure. It would be the best for everyone. A win-win solution." "No," I said. The word came out firm, clear, without a doubt. "Mom, be reasonable," Anthony insisted. "You can't be this selfish. Think about us too, about our future. We want to start a family, have kids, and we can't do it here. Not like this. We need our own space. And you do too. This would be good for you, for everyone. You just have to sign the papers, and that's it. Everything is fixed. Everyone is happy." "This house is not for sale," I repeated. "It's the only thing I have left of your father. It's the only thing I built with my own hands. I am not going to sell it. Ever." Victoria took a step forward. Her face was red with rage. "You know what, Karen? I am sick of you. I am sick of your drama, of your victim complex, of your attitude. You reach your 60s, and you think the world owes you something, that we all have to be thanking you for what you did 30 years ago." She was nearly shouting now, her voice rising with each word. "Well, no, that's over. That time is gone. Now we are the ones who work, the ones who pay the bills, the ones who keep this house standing, and you just get in the way. You just take up space. You just make our lives impossible with your bitter old woman whims." Every word was a slap, but they didn't hurt me like before, because now I saw them clearly. I saw the truth behind each one. "If I bother you so much," I said calmly, "you know where the door is. No one forced you to stay. No one is holding you here. This is my house. And if you don't like it, you can leave. But I'm staying." Victoria laughed, a bitter, ugly laugh. "Your house? Please. This house isn't yours anymore. You don't pay for anything. We pay for everything. The electricity, the water, the gas, the internet, everything. You just live here for free." She took another step toward me, her finger pointing at my face. "So don't come acting like the owner when you haven't contributed anything in months. If it weren't for us, they would have cut off all your utilities by now. You'd be living in the dark, without water, without anything, so a little gratitude wouldn't kill you." Anthony said nothing. He just stared at the floor, letting his wife destroy me with words without defending me, without protecting me. "Tomorrow," Victoria continued, "I'm bringing a real estate agent. He's going to appraise the house. He's going to see what it's worth. And we are going to start the sale process with or without your permission, because legally, if Anthony lives here, he has rights too." She crossed her arms, triumphant. "So either you cooperate and this gets done the easy way, or we do it the hard way. But it's going to get done one way or another." She turned and left. Anthony looked at me for a moment. There was something in his eyes, something like guilt, but it wasn't enough to make him speak, to make him defend me. He followed her. I was left alone in the living room, surrounded by silence, surrounded by the walls I had painted myself, the floor I had cleaned 1,000 times, the memories of a lifetime. I wasn't going to let them take this from me. I wasn't going to allow it. That night I called Sharon. I told her everything. She was at my door in 20 minutes. "Karen, you have to act now," she said urgently, "before it's too late. You need to talk to a lawyer. You need to protect your house. She sat down next to me, her eyes serious. This house is in your name, right? Only in your name? Yes, I confirmed. Only in my name. Then they can't sell it without your consent, she assured me. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter that they pay the utilities. The house is yours, but you have to be sure. You have to get everything in order before they try something. She lowered her voice, leaning in closer. There are people who forge signatures, people who do horrible things for money. And from what you're telling me, Victoria is capable of anything. She was right. I knew it. The next day, while Victoria and Anthony were at work, I went out. I went downtown. I found a lawyer, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes but a firm handshake. I told her my situation. She listened carefully, taking notes. When I finished, she looked at me over her glasses. Mrs. Hayes, let me be very clear. This house is yours. Your name is on the deed. No one can force you to sell it. No one can kick you out. Not your son, not his wife, no one. She helped me prepare documents to protect my property, a letter stating my refusal to sell, an updated will naming Sharon as my executor, and a power of attorney that would only activate if I became incapacitated. And believe me, the lawyer added as I was leaving, paying utilities doesn't give anyone ownership rights. Don't let them bully you with that nonsense. When I got home, I felt different, stronger, more secure. That afternoon, just as she had said, Victoria arrived with a man, a real estate agent with a briefcase and a professional smile. Karen, this is Mr. Gaines, Victoria said, her voice falsely cheerful. He's going to look at the house. He's going to take pictures. He's going to do the appraisal. I stood in the entryway, blocking their path. No, I said. He's not going to do any of that, because this house is not for sale. Mom, don't start, Anthony sighed. I already said no. This house is mine alone, and it is not for sale. I turned to the agent. Mr. Gaines, I appreciate you coming, but it won't be necessary. You can leave. The man looked at Victoria, then at Anthony, confused. The house isn't in your names? He asked. It's in her name, Victoria admitted through gritted teeth. But she's in agreement. It's just that... She lowered her voice theatrically. She gets a little confused sometimes. She's older. You know how it is. I am not confused, I said firmly. I am perfectly lucid, and I am telling you that this house is not for sale. Not now, not ever. So you can leave, Mr. Gaines looked at his briefcase. He cleared his throat. Well, if the owner doesn't agree, I can't do anything. I'm sorry. I can't work on a property without the owner's consent. It's illegal. He closed his briefcase. So I think it's best if I go. You all need to resolve this among yourselves first. He left. Victoria was furious. Her eyes were shooting daggers. What did you do? She hissed once the door closed behind him. I protected what's mine. This isn't going to end here, Karen, she said, her voice low and threatening. I swear to you, you are going to regret this. You are going to see what it's like to be left alone, with no one, with nothing, because that's what's going to happen. Anthony and I are going to leave, and you're going to be left here alone in this empty house, without family, without anyone to visit you, without anyone who loves you. She stepped closer, her face inches from mine. Is that what you want? To die alone? I looked her in the eyes without fear, without doubt. If it means keeping my dignity, I said, then yes, I'd rather die alone. The weeks that followed were the most tense of my life. Anthony and Victoria stopped speaking to me completely. They came in and out of the house as if I didn't exist. They ate out. They came home late. They locked themselves in their room. The house was full of people, but I had never felt so alone. But it was a different kind of loneliness. It wasn't the loneliness of feeling invisible. It was the loneliness of having chosen myself, and that, in some strange way, gave me peace. Sharon came to visit me every day. We drank coffee. We talked. She reminded me that I had done the right thing, that I had the right to defend what was mine. One night, 3 weeks after the confrontation with the real estate agent, I heard Anthony and Victoria arguing in their room. The walls were thin. I could hear every word. "I can't take it anymore," Victoria was saying, her voice strained with frustration. "I can't live like this, with her here, looking at us, judging us as if we're the bad guys, when all we've done is try to build a life. She's the one ruining everything with her stubbornness, with her selfishness." There was a pause. Then her voice grew more insistent. "I need you to make a decision, Anthony. It's her or me, because I can't go on like this. I am not going to keep living in a house where I'm not welcome, where I'm treated like an intruder." "Victoria, she's my mother," Anthony said. His voice sounded tired, defeated. "And I'm your wife. What am I to you? Don't I matter? Doesn't my happiness count?" Her voice rose. "We've been living here for years. Years of putting up with it. Years of waiting for her to come to her senses. But she's not going to. She's going to keep clinging to this house until she dies. And in the meantime, what? We just stay here. Unable to live our lives. Unable to have kids because we don't have space. Unable to breathe because she's always there, controlling everything." There was a long silence. "What do you want me to do?" Anthony finally asked, his voice barely audible. "I want you to make a decision. To choose. Her or me. Because I can't anymore. I'm leaving, Anthony. With or without you, I'm leaving. I already found an apartment. It's small, but it's ours. Or it will be mine if you decide to stay here with your mother. But I'm leaving this week, and I need to know if you're coming with me or if you're staying." The silence that followed was worse than any words. The next day, Anthony came to talk to me. It was Saturday morning. I was watering the plants in the garden, the same plants I had cared for years, the roses, the lemon tree, everything that had grown with me in this house. "Mom," he said. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. It was clear he hadn't slept well. "Victoria and I are leaving. We found an apartment. We're moving out next weekend." I stopped watering. I just looked at him. "Okay," I said. He said. "Okay?" he asked, surprised, as if he expected me to beg him to stay, to cry, to plead. "Yes, it's your decision, your life. If you think it's for the best, then it's okay." Anthony ran his hand through his hair, that gesture he made when he was nervous. "Mom, I don't want things to end like this between us. You're my mother. I love you. But Victoria is my wife, and I have to think about my marriage, about my future. I can't keep living here. Not like this. I need to build my own life. Do you understand?" "Yes, I understand." "I'll keep visiting you. I'll call you. It's not like I'm abandoning you. I just need my own space, that's all." I nodded. I knew it was a lie. I knew that once they left, the visits would become less and less frequent, the calls shorter and shorter, until one day they would stop coming altogether. I knew it. But I said nothing. "It's okay, son," I said. "I wish you the best." He came closer and hugged me. It was an awkward hug, quick, as if he wanted to get it over with. "I love you, Mom," he said. "I love you too." He left. I went back to watering my plants. The tears were falling, but I didn't stop them. I let them fall onto the soil, onto the roots of the flowers I had cared for so much. The next week was chaos. Anthony and Victoria packed all their things, boxes and more boxes. They moved furniture out. The house looked empty, bare. The day they left, Victoria didn't say goodbye. She just got into the moving truck they had rented and left. Anthony stayed at the door for a moment. "Goodbye, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion he couldn't quite express. "Goodbye, son," I replied, holding myself together with more strength than I knew I had. He left. I watched the truck drive down the street until it disappeared around the corner. I stood at the door, looking at the empty street, listening to the silence. Then I closed the door. I turned around. I looked at my house. It was empty, but it was mine. I walked through the empty living room, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors that I had polished countless times. The house felt different. Spacious. Quiet. Mine again. It wasn't a sad silence that filled the rooms, but a peaceful one, like taking a deep breath after holding it too long. I sat in my rocking chair, the one Robert had given me when Anthony was born, the one I'd rescued from its exile in the garage. The familiar creak as I rocked was comforting, a sound from my past, reclaimed for my present. Sharon knocked on my door an hour later, arriving with sweet bread and coffee. She didn't call first. She never did. That's what real friends do. "How are you?" she asked, placing the food on the coffee table. I considered the question carefully. "Free," I said finally. "I feel free." Sharon smiled, her eyes crinkling. "You did it, Karen. You got your house back. You got your life back." The days that followed developed their own rhythm. I woke when I wanted, cooked what I pleased, watched my programs without interruption. I played my records, songs Robert and I had collected over the years, melodies carrying memories in each note. Anthony didn't call. I hadn't expected him to. The break had been too clean, too final. At first, I kept to the routines established during their stay, cooking large meals, cleaning obsessively, trying to stay invisible. Old habits die hard. But gradually, I began to reclaim my space. I moved furniture back where I liked it. I replaced Victoria's gray curtains with yellow ones that let sunlight stream in unfiltered. I retrieved treasures I had hidden away. My mother's hand-crocheted Afghans, Robert's books, my collection of blue glass figurines. One Sunday morning, I stood in the kitchen staring at those cold gray tiles, those sterile white cabinets. They felt alien, nothing like the warm, inviting kitchen where I had raised Anthony, where Robert and I had shared early morning coffee. That afternoon, I went to the hardware store and bought paint, a soft, buttery yellow, the same shade Robert had chosen when we first moved in. I spent the weekend painting the cabinets. It wasn't easy at my age. My shoulders ached and my back protested. But with each brushstroke, I felt like I was erasing Victoria's presence and restoring my own. The result wasn't perfect. There were drips and uneven spots, but it was mine. I couldn't afford to replace the gray subway tiles, but I hung colorful tea towels and placed potted herbs on the windowsill. I pinned recipes and photos to a new corkboard, small touches that made the space human again. Sharon helped me sew new cushions for the dining chairs, floral prints that beautifully clashed with the modern aesthetic Victoria had imposed. We laughed as we worked, sharing stories and making plans. "We should go to that farmer's market next Saturday," she suggested. "That sounds perfect," I agreed. Simple pleasures I hadn't been able to enjoy for so long. I joined a book club at the library. I volunteered at the animal shelter walking dogs. I took a computer class at the senior center and set up an email account. I planted tomatoes and cucumbers in the backyard. My days were full, fuller than they had been in years. And they were mine. I didn't have to ask permission or accommodate anyone else's schedule. I didn't have to make myself small. There were difficult moments, of course. Evenings when the silence felt too heavy. Sundays when I remembered family dinners from years past. Anthony's birthday, which came and went without acknowledgement. I allowed myself to feel the sadness without drowning in it, then moved forward. 1 month after they left, I redecorated Anthony's old room. It had remained untouched, a shrine to the past, to the little boy I'd raised alone. I packed away his childhood trophies and high school yearbooks. I donated the twin bed where he had slept as a teenager. I painted the walls sage green. "What will you use this room for?" Sharon asked as we arranged a small desk by the window. "I'm not sure yet," I admitted, "but it's nice to have possibilities." It eventually became my craft room, a place for watercolor painting and knitting, for projects that brought me joy. A visible symbol of my transformation, the mother's room that had become mine. By fall, my house felt like home again, not as it had been during Anthony's childhood, but a new home. My home, a place where every object, every color, every scent reflected my choices and my life. I had changed too. The woman who had shrunk herself to accommodate others, who had equated self-sacrifice with love. She was fading. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who understood her own worth. I still missed Anthony. There were days when I nearly called him, hoping to bridge the gap between us. But I always set the phone down. He needed to find his own way, as I had found mine. If that path led him back someday, I would be here. Not as the doormat he had known, but as a whole person, ready for a relationship built on mutual respect. 6 months passed in a blur of small pleasures and quiet accomplishments. I repainted the living room. I planted roses in the front yard. I hosted my book club and served tea in my mother's china cups, rescued from the back of the cupboard. My life had a comfortable pattern of my own making. Yoga at the senior center on Mondays. Volunteering at the library on Tuesday afternoons. Wednesday dinners with Sharon, taking turns cooking for each other. Weekends in my garden or exploring local markets or simply reading in my rocking chair. I made new friends, women my age with similar stories, women who had rebuilt their lives after loss or divorce. We shared recipes and gardening tips. We laughed together over coffee and sometimes cried together over wine. I was building a community that had nothing to do with being someone's mother or wife. I was Karen, just Karen, and that was enough. Then, one October evening, as I washed dinner dishes, the phone rang. The caller ID showed Anthony's number. My heart raced as I dried my hands and answered. "Hello? Mom?" His voice sounded strained, exhausted. "It's me, Anthony." "I know," I said. "How are you?" There was a pause, then a deep breath. "Not good, Mom. I need to see you. Can I come over? Please?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately. He was my son, after all. But another part, the part that had learned painful lessons about boundaries, was cautious. "What's this about, Anthony?" "I can't explain over the phone. Please, Mom. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." I took a deep breath. "All right. When? Is tomorrow evening okay? Around 6? That's fine. I'll see you then." After hanging up, I called Sharon to tell her about Anthony's call. "How do you feel about that?" she asked. "Nervous? Hopeful? Afraid?" "Remember everything you've learned, Karen," she cautioned. "Don't let yourself be erased again." "I won't," I promised, and I meant it. The next day I cleaned the house, not obsessively as I once would have, but enough to feel comfortable having a visitor. I made a simple dinner to calm my nerves. At exactly 6, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Anthony looking older than his years. Disheveled hair, rumpled clothes, dark circles under his eyes. In his arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. "Hi, Mom," he said, voice rough with fatigue. "Anthony," I replied, my eyes fixed on the bundle. "Come in." He stepped inside, looking around at the changes I'd made. "You've redone the place," he observed. "Yes. I wanted it to feel like home again." He nodded, then looked down at the bundle. "This is Eleanor," he said softly. "My daughter. I named her after you." My heart caught. He had named his child after me, after the mother he had pushed aside. "Victoria left," he continued, voice breaking, 2 weeks ago. She said she wasn't ready to be a mother, that she needed space and time for herself. She just packed a bag and walked out." I gestured to the sofa. "Sit down, Anthony. You look exhausted." He sank onto the cushions, cradling the baby with unexpected tenderness. I sat across from him in my rocking chair. "How old is she?" I asked. 3 weeks. She was born early." The baby stirred, making small mewling sounds. "She's probably hungry," Anthony said, fumbling in the diaper bag. "I have a bottle ready." "Let me," I offered, holding out my arms. He hesitated before carefully transferring her to me. The weight of her awakened something primal, a grandmother's love, fierce and protective. I settled Eleanor against my chest and began feeding her with the bottle Anthony provided. She latched on immediately, her dark eyes, so like Anthony's, looking up at me. "You're good at that," he observed. "I've had practice," I reminded him gently. "I was once a new mother, too." He ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture of frustration. "I'm drowning, Mom." I don't know what I'm doing. I work full-time. Daycare costs more than my rent. I'm not sleeping. He looked at me, desperation in his eyes. I need help. Your help. I continued feeding Eleanor, weighing my response carefully. The old me would have jumped in immediately, offering to sacrifice whatever was needed. But I wasn't that woman anymore. What kind of help are you asking for, Anthony? I was hoping. He paused, looking down. I was hoping maybe Eleanor and I could stay here for a while. Just until I figure things out. He looked up, meeting my eyes. I know I have no right to ask. I know what I did, what we did, was unforgivable. But I don't know where else to turn. I looked at the baby in my arms, then back at my son, the boy I'd raised alone, the man who had pushed me aside, now a father seeking redemption. Anthony, I said steadily, this baby is beautiful, and I love her already because she's my granddaughter. I want to be in her life. I want to be her grandmother in every sense. I paused, gathering strength for what needed saying. But I can't let you move back in. I can't go back to being invisible in my own home, to being taken for granted. I've worked too hard to reclaim my life. His face fell, but I continued. That doesn't mean I won't help. I will. I'll watch Eleanor during the day while you work. I'll be part of her life, and yours, but with clear boundaries. You need to find your own place to live. You need to be her father, not my dependent. I shifted Eleanor to my shoulder, patting her back gently. You can bring her here every day. You can visit any time. But at the end of the day, you go home to your place, and I stay in mine. That's the only way this will work. Anthony was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded, tears in his eyes. You're right, he said. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything, Mom. You deserved better. I forgive you, I said, meaning it. Not because what happened was okay, but because holding on to anger only hurts me. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting the lessons I've learned. I understand, Anthony said. I promise I'll do better. I'll be the son you deserve. Eleanor had fallen asleep against my shoulder, her tiny body warm and solid. Why don't you stay for dinner? I offered. I made lasagna. Anthony smiled, tired but genuine. I'd like that. Thank you. We ate together, talking more openly than we had in years. About his job, his struggles as a new father, my volunteer work, and friends. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward pauses and painful memories. But it was a start, a fragile bridge being built. When they left, I hugged them both. Bring her tomorrow, I said. I'll watch her while you work. We'll figure out a schedule that works for us both. The relief on Anthony's face was palpable. Really? Yes, I said firmly. But remember what I said. Clear boundaries, mutual respect. That's the only way forward. I promise, he said, and I believed him. Anthony started bringing Eleanor to me every weekday. The arrangement was awkward at first. He would hover, giving me detailed instructions as if I'd never cared for a baby before. I let him fuss, understanding it came from anxiety and fear of failing as a father. Gradually, he began to trust me, to see that I knew what I was doing. I treasured those days with Eleanor. I sang the songs I had sung to Anthony. I told her stories about her grandfather and showed her the lemon tree he had planted that still bore fruit every year. I took her for walks in the neighborhood in a second-hand stroller Sharon had found. When Anthony would pick her up in the evenings, I'd give him a full report. How many bottles she'd taken, how long she'd napped, any new developments. Sometimes he'd stay for dinner. Sometimes we'd just talk briefly before he took her home. It was a delicate dance, this new relationship we were building. Not like before, when I had been the ever-accommodating mother and he the entitled son. Now we were two adults, negotiating boundaries and rebuilding trust. There were challenges, of course. Days when Eleanor was colicky and nothing soothed her. Days when Anthony arrived late with no word of thanks. Days when the weight of the past hung heavy between us. But there were beautiful moments, too. Eleanor's first smile, gummy and drooling but lighting up her entire face. The morning Anthony brought me flowers, just because. The afternoon we sat watching a thunderstorm roll in, talking about everything and nothing. Victoria called sometimes. She would ask about Eleanor and send small gifts on holidays, but she never asked to see her, never expressed any desire to be a mother. It made me sad for Eleanor, but I understood that some wounds run too deep. One evening, about 6 months after Anthony had first brought Eleanor to my door, we sat on the back patio. Eleanor was asleep inside, monitored by the baby monitor between us. The summer air was warm, scented with jasmine from the vine I had planted. "I never properly thanked you," Anthony said suddenly. "For what?" "For saying no when I asked to move in. For holding your boundary." I looked at him, surprised. "At the time, I was desperate and hurt," he continued. "But you were right. If you had let us move in, I would have fallen back into old patterns. I wouldn't have learned to stand on my own as a father." He turned to face me. "And you would have lost everything you've built, your independence, your peace. We would have gone right back to where we were before." I squeezed his hand, touched by his insight. "Thank you for understanding," I said. We sat quietly, watching fireflies emerge in the gathering dusk. Then Anthony spoke again. "You know what I've learned? Being a parent is the hardest job in the world, but being a good parent means knowing when to help and when to step back." He looked at me directly. "You've always been a good mother, even when I couldn't see it. You loved me enough to let me make my mistakes, and you loved yourself enough not to let those mistakes destroy you." Tears filled my eyes. "I'm still learning," I admitted. "Every day." "Me too," he said, glancing at the monitor. "I'll make plenty of mistakes with Eleanor, but I hope I can teach her what you've taught me, about strength, dignity, and standing up for yourself." "You will," I assured him, "and I'll be here to remind you." Eleanor's soft cry came through the monitor, and Anthony rose, but first he bent down and kissed my cheek. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, son." As he went inside, I stayed on the patio, looking at my garden in the fading light. The roses were blooming. The lemon tree was heavy with fruit. The jasmine climbed the trellis I had installed myself. My house, my sanctuary, was still mine. But it was no longer a fortress against the world. It had become a haven, a place of healing for 3 generations learning to love each other with respect and boundaries. I had lost so much over the years, but I had gained something precious. The knowledge that I mattered. That my life had value not just for what I could give others, but for who I was in myself. I gathered our teacups and went inside where Anthony was softly singing to Eleanor, the same lullaby I once sang to him. My heart swelled with love and gratitude. This was my house. These were my rules. This was my life. And it was good.